you have to look at things. Gets back to objectivity. This whole narrative of what things were, or how they were made, is irrelevant. Jessica is reading Thomas Merton's Seven-Story Mountain, and I had told her about Thomas Merton. Uh, he's a Catholic priest who had Orientalist tendencies, and he was a good writer, a prose writer. His poetry is mediocre, but he was against the Vietnam War. He died in a freak accident back in the 60s. And so she's reading his book, and she's saying it's one of the better biographies, not quite as good as Lauren Isley, but he probably led a life just as interesting, if not more so than Isley. Um, and I'm going to try to do a story on him. But I got her into Merton, and she's saying how Merton was praising, said he had a teacher when he went to college. His teacher in writing was this guy, Mark Van Doren. And I've mentioned Mark Van Doren before. He was actually a pretty good poet. He wasn't a great poet, but he wrote good, solid poetry. Out of his 1,000-page collected poem books, there's maybe 40 or 50 pages that's subpar, but 950 pages or so of good, solid poetry at minimum to very good poetry at best. Maybe 2 or 3 times he may have stumbled onto greatness, but a very admirable poet, because he, just like Thomas Hardy, but far more successfully than Thomas Hardy, his poetry, he did play around with form on it. And Merton talks about him and saying that he learned from Van Doren, this is back in the 1940s, that what the new critics of the 1950s said, that it doesn't matter where the provenance of the art has to stand by itself. If it can't stand by itself, it's utterly worthless as art. I mean, it really is. You can have art that stands by itself, and that can be enhanced. You can have the cherry on top, that putting it into a certain political or philosophic or time-sensitive era can add to it. That's good, but it has to reach a certain level of quality all by itself.